Eastgate Corner and Bridge Street Row East. Our starting point is the Eastgate corner of the Cross, where the old city's four main streets converge. This was the heart of Roman Chester. The ancient fort is buried beneath your feet. It's been an important meeting point for centuries. The High Cross at the centre of this staggered junction, from where a busker might be serenading you today, is a version of the 14th century original that was pulled down by the parliamentarians during the English Civil War. The red sandstone cross was only restored to this spot in the 70s, and the version you can see dates from the mid-20th century, although the lantern head is thought to be a remnant of its predecessor. Now study the grand architecture of the Eastgate corner and the opposite Watergate corner. The glorious black and white Eastgate corner is one of Britain's finest examples of Tudor revival architecture. It's a style popularly used throughout the rows and the wider city. Go down the steps to the street for a moment to take in its full effect. From this vantage point, look across at Watergate corner. It's quite different, dressed in stone and diapered brick with Baroque and Renaissance flourishes. Black and white timberwork is only visible at its top floor, and that looks like it has been lent by its neighbour. Yet both designs were the work of the same Victorian architect, Thomas Lockwood, for the first Duke of Westminster, and they were constructed within the same decade at the end of the 1800s. In sharp contrast, the north side of the square is dedicated to the single edifice of the hefty red sandstone church of St. Peter's. Notice its entrance is at row level. Some historians think that this is because it sits on the remains of the Romans' headquarters building. The crossroads might even be staggered to circumvent the ancient HQ. This is indeed the heart of the fort, Diva Victrix, founded in AD 79. Chester was even once considered for the Romans' capital, a strategic stronghold on the front line of the Celtic Badlands. Now return to row level and turn your attention to the shops that wrap around the Eastgate corner of the row. Here you'll discover a miniature jewellery quarter. Chester is famed for its silver, first made here in the 1570s. The city was just one of a few places in the country to have its own stamp. You can find out more about this in the Ridgeway Silver Gallery at the city's Grosvenor Museum. There are several long-standing independent jewellers in the city, and here you'll find some of them, including Low & Sons at number 11 Bridge Street Row. It was established by one of the families that dominated silversmithing from the Victorian era, and Powell's at number 2 Eastgate Row is Chester's oldest family-run antique jeweller. Step inside the beautiful Victorian interior of Low & Sons and climb the stairs to browse the jeweller's private museum. It displays some fascinating exhibits and stories from the firm's 250-year history. The tale of a curious connection with the ill-fated passenger liner the Titanic is just one. Continue south along this lively row, browsing its boutiques as you go. Perhaps pause to take a seat on one of the stallboards. The large slabs of wood, tile or stone between the balustrade and the passageway. In places, these stallboards have been turned to use as outdoor terraces by some of the cafes. You'll soon reach the grand entrance to the Edwardian-era St Michael's Arcade, which leads to the Grosvenor Shopping Centre. Continue forward to number 49. It's now occupied at row level by the restaurant Carbonara, but the original purpose of this half-timbered building was as the rectory for the nearby church of St Michael's. Look across the road at the opposite row and you'll glimpse some other interesting structures. The 17th century Dutch houses and the medieval three old arches. You can find out more about these buildings on the next section of our trail, Bridge Street Row West. Continue to the end of this row to find St Michael's Church, a 15th century place of worship that was largely rebuilt in Victorian times. It's now the quirky museum Sick to Death, which tells the gruesome history of medicine. The rows on both sides of this street once continued all the way down to the River Dee, but they have been lost in time, except for a few architectural clues. So cross Bridge Street and return to row level at the Three Old Arches for the next part of our circular journey through the Chester Rows.